What's up, Wastelanders? How's everybody doing today? I'm doing great, and I hope you are too. It's me, Kiki Bee. Welcome to a brand new episode of Kiki Bee Plays Fallout 76. Today, we're continuing with our shelter series because it's been too long, and we're going to be touring and talking about every single shelter available up to this point, except for the Soundstage shelter on this season's scoreboard. I will be sharing my thoughts on all of them because there are 12 now, holy crap, and they all have their pros and cons, and it can be pretty overwhelming trying to figure out which ones you might actually want, especially because the Atomic Shop pictures really don't give you much of an idea of what the space is actually like or really anything else. So here I am because I have all of them except the nuclear test bunker, so I borrowed one for this video. Also, as with any situation where I'm discussing Atomic Shop stuff, I am not trying to encourage anyone to spend money on the game. I just want to make sure that you have a reliable source of information so you can decide how you want to spend any atoms that you've earned in-game or bought or received through Fallout First. Your financial health is important. Please take care of yourself and don't get caught up in the FOMO and end up spending more than you're comfortably able to on something that, while fun, definitely isn't worth the added financial stress that overspending can bring. Yeah, I know, I'm such a mom, but I care about y'all. Alright, so we're going to look at all 12 shelters in just a sec, but real quick before we do, if you love what I do here and you're interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining our Patreon family or becoming a channel member right here on YouTube. Head on over to patreon.com/KikiBee or click that join button right below this video. Of course, subscribing and turning on those channel notifications helps me out big time and is completely free, and don't forget to join us on the Happy Camper Discord, on Instagram, and on Twitch. We would love to see you there. Now, without further delay, shelters. So we're going to start with the vault shelters. These all have vault-style shelter entrances. There's a hatch for the utility room, interior and exterior vault doors for the lobby, atrium, quarters, and server room, and a hatch and a recolored interior vault door for the storage facility. So first up is the utility room, and you're probably wondering why I'm bothering to include it, because it's the free shelter that everyone gets. But it's helpful as a comparison tool, and it's actually surprisingly a good shelter, so we're starting here. Now, at first glance, you might be inclined to dismiss this one because it's pretty small and doesn't look like much, but if you put some time and love into it, you can really turn it into something special. The only real downside is that you don't get much build height, so if you're wanting to build tall stuff, it's just not going to happen here. But I've seen some really stunning utility room builds, so if you've just kind of gone meh in the past, I would encourage you to revisit it and try to get creative. It won't disappoint you. If you don't believe me, here's mine. I built this one shortly after Shelters came out, and I haven't really touched it since, other than to add in a few new bits of decor. I just love popping into it every now and then, just to enjoy the ambiance. And dividing up the space into differently themed rooms like this, and cluttering it up nicely, makes the shelter feel way more spacious than it is. And you can pack this one full of all kinds of lovely stuff, and you'll be very hard-pressed to actually use all your build budget. Mine is about 2/3 full. Okay, so let's move on to the lobby. This shelter is the freebie for Fallout First members, and it's one of the best vault shelters. It's got some nice height, a good amount of floor space, and a decent-sized second room in the back. Aside from the vaulty wall brackets and the occasional barrel in the way, this is a pretty well thought out and well-designed shelter. It's kind of the Goldilocks shelter in my opinion. Everything about it is just right. The main room is big enough to give you a lot of freedom when you're building, but not so big that you can't properly fill it up if you want. It's pretty versatile, and while I know some folks hate the stairs in the middle, you can cover them up without losing much space. But personally, I enjoy the little bit of challenge that designing around them provides, because one of my biggest issues with shelters is that the freedom we have just kind of leaves me without inspiration. Like, I don't remember how to build if there's no struggle involved or something, so even having some unusual stairs I need to work around really helps me, I guess. Now the Atrium. I have mixed feelings about this one. I like it overall, but for me it's a bit too big for the budget. This is also one where you might run out of lights at some point depending on what you're building, because you can only build 50 lights in any shelter. You do have a lot of height in the main room, so that's cool, and I like the big overseer window up at the top. The split level is kind of interesting, and I've always called this area the cafeteria, and you'll never convince me it's not. The hall leading to the overseer's office is a bit long and awkward. The best use of that space that I've ever seen was when someone turned it into an art gallery. That was really nice. Then we've got the overseer's office, which is cool. It's got nice flooring and a cool window and a very high ceiling. Also, no glass in the window, so you can use it as a doorway if you really want, and I've seen that done before. Anyway, yeah, generally not my favorite shelter, but not the worst either. Next up is the vault quarters. I really like this shelter, and not just because of the pretty aquarium in the middle, although that's definitely a plus. I'm not a huge fan of the horrible glaring spotlights over the AstroTurf, but I can overlook it. But what I like most about it is that it's got lots of smaller rooms, so it's much easier to divide up and decorate the space without needing to waste a lot of your build budget on extra walls and things. So because of that, you can fill it pretty well within the build budget. You can't cram it as full as, say, the lobby or the utility room, obviously, but there's definitely enough budget to make each room actually look good. I also really like all the color in this one. The rooms all sort of have their own little color palettes, and it's visually just nice, I guess. But yeah, none of the individual spaces are excessively big, which is a good thing, and there are some nice decorative touches like the aquarium and plants in the windows and skylight that just make it a little bit more polished overall. So if you're looking for my top pick of the vault shelters, it's this one. Okay, so now let's take a look at the server room. I'll be honest, I don't love this one. It's really cool at first glance, but it's got a big and awkwardly shaped main room. It's a really weird space and doesn't, at least in my opinion, seem to have been designed with building in mind at all. It does at least have glass in all the windows, unlike all the other vault shelters, so that's something, I guess. But then you've got a big and awkwardly shaped side room, and this weird indentation in one corner that I just don't understand. Like, why can't this room just be square? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. The actual server room thing is cool looking, but it serves no purpose, and all you can do is stare at it, and the novelty wears off fast. Then there's another small side room with more cool views, and that's about it. I'm not super impressed with this one. I'm actually finally building in it in my latest camp, but only because I'm blocking off most of it and just using the entryway and part of the main room. I just needed a place where I could build a large interior, and my server room was still empty, so yeah, it's gonna be a super duper mart now. Which kind of feels like a waste. So our last vault shelter is the storage facility. It's got a little entryway that's basically identical to the utility room, but retextured, and then a massive main room with long skinny little rooms on each end. It's not a really amazing looking shelter, but it definitely gives you plenty of freedom to build just about anything. And the windows at the top are kind of neat, I guess. This one's just kind of okay, nothing super exciting. Of course, it's got the stupid vault brackets on the walls, so you won't be able to properly build wall to wall. There's not a whole lot to say about it, really. It's big, and since the main room is an actual rectangle with no split level weirdness or strange shape or anything, it's pretty good if you want more of a blank canvas situation for building in, especially larger structures. Now we're moving on to the cave shelters. These ones have cool entrances that I personally really like. You've got the small boarded up mine entrance one, or the massive industrial elevator thingy, which is neat and can be a really cool addition to a camp, especially down in the ash heap. And if you've seen my custom shelter entrances video, you've seen some of the things you can do with the little doorway as well. Alright, so first we've got the abandoned mine. The entrance is a nice tunnel with some pretty lighting and minecart tracks, a little bit creepy, which can be cool. The tracks continue through the main cave, which is nice and spacious and has a really good high ceiling and a decently flat floor. You can fit, like, the water slide prefab in here really easily. There are no obnoxiously bright lights in here, like in some shelters, just a nice even gloom in the main space, but there is still good visibility. So that does give you a lot of options in terms of customizing your lighting inside the shelter. There's a gorgeous puddle for splashing about over in one corner, and another bit of tunnel on the other side. Overall, if you want a fairly neutral, natural, non-bunkery kind of space to do some actual building in, like original structures and stuff, this is a really good shelter for that. This is definitely my favorite cave shelter, and it's one of my top shelter picks overall. Now, the other cave shelter is the Forbidden Dig Site, and I have mixed feelings about this one. It's got a nice big central space, which I love, but it does have these stupid bright construction lights. You can turn them off individually, that's nice, but if you want them off, you'll have to shut them off each time you log on, which is really stupid to have to do. There are some big rectangular pits, which I've always thought would make a really cool cellar under a house or something, and a couple of side caves that might be fun to do some stuff in, or might just be annoying depending on what and how you want to build. I have a feeling that I will always just end up ignoring them. Anyway, I've never really had any specific inspiration for this shelter, but I've seen some very cool builds in it. It's not amazing, not awful, but maybe it suits your needs better than it does mine. That's the cool part of having so many different shelters to choose from, I guess. Alright, now we've got what I refer to as the bunker shelters. There are 2 of these so far, and they've got nifty hatch-style entrances that can look pretty cool in your camp. These shelters still look like man-made underground structures, but they lack all the vault flavoring that the vault shelters have, so they're interesting if you don't like the look of vaults or you get annoyed by the stupid wall brackets or snapping points in the vault shelters. First up, we've got the missile silo. This is another one of my favorite shelters to date. As with most of the gimmicks in the various shelters, I don't really care one way or another about the missile. What I love about this one is the space. It's got a little split level area at the entrance, but other than that, it's basically a big rectangular open room with a smaller room below which you can easily block off if you choose. Now this one has a lot of built-in lighting, and it's pretty even neutral lighting, so it will save you a lot on your actual light budget. You can turn the lights on and off with a few switches, but as with the dig site, you'll have to turn them off every time you log on if you want them to stay off, so just keep that in mind before you build. Anyway, you have a lot of flexibility due to the large uninterrupted space. It's got good build height, and there's an interesting little maintenance room down below that could be fun to play around with. If you want a shelter that still looks bunkery but is more neutral than a vault, this one is probably your best bet. The second bunker shelter is the nuclear test bunker. This one's an interesting shelter, and after having actually spent a little time in it, I like it more than I thought I would. This was the only one I ever passed on in the shop because all it seemed to have going for it was, ooh, push a button, blow up a nuke, which isn't all that interesting. But the shelter itself is actually not terrible. The main room is pretty bare and basic, which is a positive thing in my opinion. And there's a little ramp down into the other rooms, one on each side, which are a nice size for decorating. This could make a good player home kind of shelter, maybe. Size-wise, it's somewhere in between the utility room and the lobby, so for folks who really like cluttered build styles, this is a good one for cramming full of, like, everything that you own. All in all, definitely not the worst shelter to date. I want to say thanks to Goldfinger76 for lending me their test bunker shelter for this tour. Please go check out some of the amazing builds on their YouTube channel. I've put that link down in the description. You won't be disappointed. Alright, the last category here is what I call the wasteland shelters. These ones are actually exteriors, but as a shelter. Each one has a totally unique entrance, and the shelters themselves are pretty cool. So let's start with the neighborhood square, which has this interesting little hatch entrance. This one is a pit-themed exterior cell, and it's really neat. So as you can see, you've got a pretty large build area, but even though it is quite large, I feel like it's easier to build smaller in it because of the roads and sidewalks, if that makes any sense. You've got a collapsed railway tunnel at one end, which I stuck a train car prefab in, using that door snapping trick that I showed in a recent video. That link is down in the description if you're looking for it. The build height is even with the tops of the existing buildings, so you can't build higher than the buildings. And as far as lighting, you've got nice sunny daylight to work with, which is great. Since time doesn't technically pass in shelters, you'll always have 10 AM sunshine. Weather won't change, sun won't move. It's pretty much ideal lighting to work with. Overall, it's a very good shelter. My only real complaint is that there isn't a simple door version of the entrance, only the in-ground hatch, so you're a little more limited in how you can work the entrance into your camp. Finally, the Toxic Wasteland is the latest shelter and currently in the shop at the time of this video's release. So starting with the entrance, it's this cute cargo bot and crate thing. Very cool, totally unique, and I really hope it stays unique and that Bethesda doesn't decide to recycle this for more shelter entrances. That would be lame, honestly. Now, the first thing I obviously wanted to know with this thing is if I could float it, and you can. It's super easy. Just put your camp module at roughly the height that you want the crate, and then set the entrance on top of the camp module. Once you move the module away, you'll be left with a hovering cargo bot. That's it. Do keep in mind that if it's up too high, you or your visitors may have a hard time actually entering it. This shelter only has the cargo bot entrance, so as with the neighborhood square entrance, you're more limited as to how you can work it into your camp build. So now the shelter itself. It's a flat, barren, toxic wasteland. It reminds me of the Capital Wasteland, and I love it so much. The build area is really big, but because it's so barren, I feel like it would still look completely reasonable and normal to build like one lonely house or shack in the middle of it. Also, the build height is insane. You can build 10 walls high, but if you are building a really tall structure, I'd recommend capping it off at 9 stories so that you still have room to put a roof on top of the thing. The streets and sidewalks divide up the space into various little lots, and you could do so much with that. Mr. B thought that the aerial view looked like a life-size HeroQuest board, so there's an idea for you. Or you could build a wasteland town with shell structures on all of the lots that have shelter entrances in them, or recreate Tenpenny Tower, which was the first thing I thought of when I walked in here. There are so many possibilities and so few limits. It's big, it's flat, it's got even lighting and reasonable visibility, and crazy build height. This is hands down my favorite shelter now, and I'm so happy with the damn thing. It is truly a builder's paradise. Now I will say it is the most expensive shelter so far, at 2,000 atoms, but worth every atom in my opinion. So if this shelter is within your budget and you love building in wastelandy exterior settings, I highly, highly recommend it. So that's it from me today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it'll help you to be able to choose the shelters that are right for you. It can be pretty hard to get a sense of the size and space and layout and lighting and all of those things from just a few weird photos in the Atomic Shop, half of them with some strange blueprint overlay thing on them. So yeah, I really hope this helps. Don't forget to make sure that you're subscribed and you've turned on those channel notifications so you don't miss out on the next absolutely amazing video. As always, if you enjoyed this and you're interested in supporting the channel, you can join our Patreon family or become a channel member right here on YouTube. Don't forget to join us over on the Happy Camper Discord, on Instagram, and on Twitch. We would love to see you there. And with that, folks, take care of yourselves, be good to each other, and I will see you in the next video.